Commander Valus Sorn stood at the observation deck of the diplomatic vessel and watched the stars pass by like cold diamonds against the endless black of space. She was tall, even by the standards of her own people, the Kethvari. 7 feet of violet-scaled muscle and bone, 4 powerful arms that could bend steel bars, and eyes that glowed amber in the darkness. She had earned her rank through blood and fire, through battles that had made her name feared across 3 star systems. Warriors whispered her title with respect. The Storm of Verith, the one who had broken the siege of Chorus Prime with nothing but her claws and her fury. And now she stood here, bound by politics and treaty, married to a human. She still could not believe this was her life now. The war between the Kethvari Empire and the Terran Confederacy had lasted 12 years and cost millions of lives on both sides. When the peace treaty was finally signed, both governments had demanded a symbol of unity, something that would show the galaxy that these 2 great powers could work together. A marriage between a high-ranking Kethvari officer and a Terran diplomat had been the answer. Valith had been chosen because of her status and her victories. She had not been given a choice. Her husband's name was David Chun, and he was everything she despised. He was small, barely reaching her shoulder, even when she bent her lower pair of arms. His skin was soft and fragile, without scales or armor or any natural protection. He had no claws, no fangs, no venom glands. He had only one heart, which seemed absurdly risky to her. If it failed, he would simply die. How had such creatures ever survived long enough to reach the stars? David spent his days doing things that made no sense to her. He read old Terran books made of actual paper, handling the pages with careful fingers. He tended a small garden in their shared quarters, growing plants that served no military or nutritional purpose. He cooked meals with strange spices and offered them to her with that constant soft smile on his face. He smiled too much. He spoke too quietly. He never raised his voice, never showed anger, never displayed any of the fire that a proper warrior should possess. The Kethvari crew of the vessel had noticed, of course. They whispered behind their claws when they thought she could not hear. Their great commander, the Storm of Verith, had been shackled to a creature who would die from a fall that would not even bruise a Kethvari child. What an insult! What a humiliation! Valith bore the shame in silence because she had no other choice. She was a soldier, and soldiers followed orders. The High Command had commanded her to marry this human, and so she had. But no one could command her to respect him. David seemed to sense her coldness, but he never complained about it. He simply continued his quiet routines, giving her space, never pushing, never demanding. She had expected him to be needy or desperate for her approval. Instead, he seemed completely at peace with her distance. That bothered her more than she wanted to admit. 3 weeks into their marriage, she watched him in the common area of their quarters. He was practicing some kind of movement exercise, slow and flowing, his body moving through positions that seemed almost like a dance. His eyes were closed, his breathing steady, his focus absolute. "What are you doing?" she demanded, her voice harsh. He opened his eyes and smiled at her. That same gentle smile that made her want to bare her fangs. "It is called Tai Chi," he said. "An ancient Terran practice. It helps with balance and calm." "It looks useless," she said. "If an enemy attacked you while you moved that slowly, you would be dead before you could defend yourself." David nodded, accepting her criticism without argument. "You are probably right," he said. "I have never been much of a fighter." She snorted and walked away, disgusted by his weakness. But something nagged at her that night as she tried to sleep. She had noticed calluses on his hands when he had served her dinner. Thick, rough patches of hardened skin on his palms and fingers. Where did a diplomat and gardener get calluses like that? She dismissed the thought. It did not matter. He was weak, and that was all she needed to know. 1 month into their marriage, she discovered he kept a locked case in the storage compartment of their quarters. It was long and thin, made of dark metal, with a biometric seal that responded only to his touch. She had tried to open it once when he was not there, curious despite herself, but the lock had refused her. "What is in the case?" she asked him that evening. David looked up from his book and glanced at the storage compartment. Something flickered across his face, so fast she almost missed it. For just a moment, his eyes were not soft at all. Then the expression was gone, replaced by his usual calm. "Old things," he said. "From before I became a diplomat." "That is not an answer." "No," he agreed. "It is not." He went back to his reading, and she found herself too surprised to push further. He had refused her. Quietly, politely, but firmly. He had set a boundary and held it. That was the first time she wondered if there was something more to David Chun than she had assumed. But the thought faded quickly. Humans were not predators. Their history books showed they had once hunted with rocks and sticks, chasing animals across open plains until the creatures collapsed from exhaustion. They were not strong or fast or deadly. They had simply been stubborn enough to outlast their prey. Stubbornness was not strength. Patience was not power. Or so Valeth believed. The diplomatic vessel continued on its mission, carrying representatives to a conference at the edge of Kethvari space. Valeth commanded her crew with the same iron discipline she had always shown. She attended meetings and dinners and smiled for the cameras when required. At night, she returned to quarters she shared with a husband she barely spoke to. David continued his quiet life beside her, never complaining, never pushing. He tended his garden and read his books and practiced his slow movements. Sometimes she caught him watching her with those soft brown eyes, and she could not read what was behind them. He was a mystery she had decided not to solve. She would regret that decision very soon, because something was coming. In the darkness between stars, enemies were gathering. And when the storm finally broke, Valeth would learn that she had never truly seen her husband at all. She had seen only what he had chosen to show her. And David Chun was very, very good at hiding what he truly was. Valeth's station hung in the void like a metal flower, its docking arms stretched wide to welcome ships from a dozen different species. It was a trading post, a refueling point, a place where travelers could rest before continuing their journeys across the galaxy. The diplomatic vessel had stopped here for supplies, a routine visit that should have taken only a few hours. Valeth stood on the command deck as the docking clamps locked into place. She felt no concern, no warning, no hint of what was about to happen. The station looked peaceful. The traffic around it seemed normal. There was nothing to suggest that death was waiting in the shadows. "We will need 6 hours for full resupply," her second-in-command reported. "The crew requests permission for shore leave." Valeth considered the request. Her crew had been working hard, and Valeth's station had a reputation for good food and entertainment. She saw no reason to deny them some rest. "Granted," she said, "but keep your communication devices active. I want everyone back on the ship within 1 hour if I give the order." "Understood, Commander." David was in their quarters when she returned. He was reading again some old Terran story about warriors and honor. She glanced at the book's cover and felt the usual mix of confusion and contempt. Why did he spend so much time with these ancient tales? "I am going to meet with the station administrator," she told him. "We need to discuss docking fees and supply routes." "Do you want me to come with you?" he asked. "No," she said, perhaps too quickly. "Stay here. I will not be long." He nodded and went back to his reading. She left without looking back. The meeting with the station administrator was dull but necessary. They discussed trade agreements and shipping lanes and all the boring details that kept civilizations running. Velith's mind wandered more than once, thinking about the battle she would rather be fighting, the glory she had traded for politics. She was walking back to the ship when the first explosion shook the station. The floor buckled beneath her feet, throwing her against the wall. Alarms screamed to life, red lights flashing in the corridors. Smoke poured from somewhere ahead, and she could hear screaming in the distance. Velith drew her plasma pistol and pressed herself against the wall, her warrior instincts taking over. What was happening? An accident? An attack? The answer came seconds later when a group of armed figures rounded the corner. They wore black armor marked with a symbol she recognized immediately, a blade dripping blood. The Hollow Blade Syndicate. Pirates, slavers, killers who carved their cruelty into the hulls of conquered ships. They were the worst kind of scum, and they had chosen Velith's station as their hunting ground. Velith opened fire without hesitation. Her plasma bolts dropped the first 3 raiders before they could react. The more were coming, pouring into the corridor like insects from a broken nest. She could not hold this position alone. She fell back, fighting every step, using her 4 arms to fire and reload and push obstacles into the path of her enemies. Her crew. Where was her crew? She needed to reach them, to organize a defense, to fight back against this invasion. Her communication device crackled with panicked voices. The ship was under attack. The crew was scattered across the station. The raiders had planned this perfectly, striking when everyone was separated and vulnerable. Velith fought her way through 3 more squads of pirates, leaving broken bodies in her wake. She was the Storm of Verith. She was a warrior without equal, but even she could not be everywhere at once. A pulse grenade landed at her feet. She tried to jump away, but she was not fast enough. The blast caught her in midair and slammed her into the wall with terrible force. She felt her dominant arms break, the bones snapping like dry branches. Pain exploded through her body, so intense that her vision went white. When she could see again, she was on the ground, surrounded by raiders. They were laughing, pointing their weapons at her, speaking in voices thick with cruel amusement. "Look at this!" A Kathvari commander. "The captain will want to see her." They grabbed her broken arms and dragged her through the corridors. Velith screamed in agony but could not break free. Her strength was failing. Her vision was fading. She could feel blood running down her face from a wound she did not remember receiving. They took her to an airlock chamber near the station's outer ring. A massive figure was waiting there, bigger than any of the other raiders. He was a Vorkan, a species known for their size and brutality, and his face was a nightmare of cybernetic modifications. Metal tusks jutted from his jaw. One eye had been replaced with a glowing red sensor. Scars covered every inch of visible skin. "Captain Drex," one of the raiders announced. "We found a prize." The Vorkan captain looked down at Velith with his one organic eye. A slow, ugly smile spread across his face. "A Kathvari commander," he said, his voice like grinding metal. "How wonderful. We will make an example of you. We will show the galaxy what happens to those who stand against the hollow blade." Velith tried to rise, tried to fight, but her broken body would not obey. She was helpless, and she hated herself for it. She was going to die here, not in glorious battle, but as a trophy for pirates. And David? What about her husband? He had been in their quarters when the attack began. Surely he was hiding somewhere, cowering in fear, waiting for the danger to pass. He was a diplomat, a gardener, a man who practiced slow movements and read old books. He was not a fighter. He could not help her. She had left him alone. If the raiders found him, they would kill him without a second thought. His soft skin, his fragile body, his gentle smile. None of it would protect him. Strange, she thought through the haze of pain. She had not cared about him before, but now, facing death, she found herself hoping he would survive. He did not deserve to die because she had dragged him into this life. Captain Drex was speaking, making a speech about Kethvari arrogance and human weakness and the power of the hollow blade. Valeth barely heard him. Her thoughts were drifting, her consciousness fading. Then the lights went out. Every light in the corridor died at once, plunging the chamber into absolute darkness. The raiders shouted in confusion, their weapons sweeping back and forth, searching for threats they could not see. And somewhere in the darkness, something moved. Valeth heard a sound she would never forget, the soft whisper of metal sliding from a sheath. Then she heard the first body hit the floor. Someone was coming. Someone had found them in the dark. And the raiders of the Hollowblade Syndicate were about to learn what humans were truly capable of when someone they cared about was in danger. The darkness was absolute, thick and heavy like a living thing. Captain Drex roared orders at his raiders, his mechanical eye spinning as it tried to switch to thermal vision. The other pirates fired blindly into the shadows, their weapons lighting up the corridor in brief flashes of deadly light. But between those flashes, something was hunting them. Valeth lay on the ground, her broken arms useless, her body screaming with pain. But her eyes were adapting to the darkness, and she could see shapes moving in the black. She saw the raiders falling, one after another, their bodies crumpling to the floor without making a sound. How was this possible? What kind of creature could move through armed pirates like wind through tall grass? Then she remembered something from her studies about humans, something she had dismissed as unimportant. Humans were pursuit predators. Their ancient ancestors had not been the strongest or the fastest creatures on their home world. Instead, they had hunted by following their prey for hours, sometimes days, until the animal collapsed from exhaustion. But there was something else. Humans could see in low light. Their eyes could adjust to darkness that would blind most species. And they were quiet. So very, very quiet when they wanted to be. The flashes of weapons fire illuminated the corridor in broken images. A raider standing one moment, falling the next. Another reaching for his throat, where something dark was spreading across his armor. A third turning to run, only to meet something coming from behind. And then, for just 1 second, she saw him. David Chun moved through the darkness like a ghost made of blade and shadow. He wore simple clothes, the same ones she had seen him wear that morning. But in his hands, he held a sword. It was long and straight, gleaming even in the near-total darkness, and it moved like an extension of his body. He did not fight like a Kethvari. There was no roaring, no display of dominance, no wasted motion. Every movement was precise and economical. Every strike was exactly where it needed to be. He flowed between enemies like water around stones, and wherever he passed, death followed. Valeth had seen warriors from a dozen species. She had fought the best soldiers the galaxy could produce. But she had never seen anything like this. David did not attack his enemies. He simply passed through them, and they ceased to exist. A raider charged at him with a vibroblade, screaming a war cry that cut off abruptly as David pivoted, slashed once, and continued moving without breaking stride. Another fired directly at him, but David was no longer there. He had read the angle of the weapon, predicted where the shot would go, and stepped aside before the trigger was pulled. 11 seconds. Valeth counted them in her head, each heartbeat a mark of time passing. 11 seconds from the first body hitting the floor to the last. 12 raiders. 12 dead raiders. Only Captain Drex remained, his massive form backing toward the wall, his cybernetic eye finally locking onto the figure approaching him. The Vorkan captain was twice David's size, armed with weapons that could tear through starship hulls. augmented with technology that had made him a terror across the sector. But for the first time, Valis saw fear in those mismatched eyes. "What are you?" Drex snarled, raising his weapon. David did not answer. He simply moved. The Vorkan captain died with his weapon still pointed at empty air, his throat opened by a blade he never saw coming. It crashed to the floor like a falling mountain, and then there was silence. David stood in the middle of the carnage, his sword still in his hand, blood dripping from the blade onto the metal floor. His breathing was steady, controlled, as if he had done nothing more strenuous than tend his garden. His face was calm, almost peaceful, despite the violence that had just passed through his hands. Then he turned and walked toward Valith. She tried to move away, suddenly afraid of this stranger wearing her husband's face. What was he? What had he been hiding all this time? She had lived with him for months, dismissed him as weak and useless, never suspecting that something like this lurked beneath his gentle surface. But David just knelt beside her, setting his sword on the ground, and his voice was exactly the same as it had always been. Soft and warm and kind. "Are you hurt?" he asked. She stared at him, unable to form words. Her broken arms throbbed. Her head spun from blood loss and shock. And all she could think was that she had never truly seen this man before. "I am going to check your injuries," David said, his hands moving gently over her arms. "These breaks are serious, but the medical bay on the ship has regeneration equipment. We need to get you back there." "How?" she finally managed to ask. "How did you do that?" David's eyes met hers, and for just a moment, she saw something ancient behind them. Not cruelty, not bloodlust, but something older. A weight that came from carrying death in your hands and choosing, every single day, to set it down. "Humans are not what we appear to be," he said. "We learned very early in our history that the loudest predator rarely catches its prey. We learned to be quiet, to be patient, to wait until the perfect moment to strike." He helped her to her feet, supporting her weight with surprising strength. She had always thought of him as fragile, but now she could feel the iron beneath his soft exterior. His muscles were lean but dense, built for speed and precision rather than brute force. "The sword," she said, looking at the blade on the ground. "That was in the locked case." "Yes," he admitted. "It belonged to my teacher, and his teacher before him. The art is called Heidong Gumdo. It is very old. You are not just a diplomat." "No," he said, and there was sadness in his voice. "I am not." He retrieved his sword and cleaned the blade on a fallen raider's cloak before sheathing it. Then he guided her toward the corridor that led back to the docking bay. Behind them, the bodies of the Hollow Blade Syndicate's finest warriors lay still and silent. Emergency lights flickered on as they walked, casting everything in red shadows. Valith leaned on David, too weak to walk alone, and tried to understand what had just happened. Her husband, the man she had dismissed and ignored, had just killed 12 armed raiders in less time than it took to draw a breath. She had been married to a warrior all along, and she had never even known. "Why?" she asked as they walked. "Why did you hide this?" David was silent for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was heavy with something she could not name. "Because I was tired," he said. "Tired of death. I wanted to be something else. Something gentler." He looked at her, and she saw the truth in his eyes. "But when someone I care about is in danger, the old ways come back very quickly." Valith did not know what to say to that. So she said nothing, and they walked together through the red-lit corridors, leaving the dead behind them. The medical bay was quiet except for the soft hum of regeneration equipment. Valith lay on the treatment table, her broken arms encased in healing fields, while nanobots worked to repair the damage. The pain had faded to a dull ache, thanks to the medication flowing through her system. David sat in a chair beside her, still holding his sword. He had not sheathed it since they returned to the ship, and she understood why. The attack might not be over. Other raiders might still be on the station. He was ready to fight again, if necessary. But for now, there was silence between them. Vili's crew had secured the vessel and were helping station security eliminate the remaining pirates. The Hollow Blade Syndicate's assault had failed, broken by a single human with an ancient weapon. News of the attack was already spreading across the communications network, and soon the whole sector would know what had happened. "I think I deserve answers," Valeth finally said. David nodded slowly. "Yes, you probably do. Start from the beginning. Who are you really?" He was quiet for a long moment, staring at the wall as if seeing something far away. When he spoke, his voice was different from what she was used to. There was weight in it and old pain. "I started training with the sword when I was 6 years old," he said. "My grandfather taught me." He learned from his father, who learned from his father, and so on for many generations. Heidongumdo is an ancient art, born in a country called Korea on the human homeworld. 6 years old? Valeth interrupted. "You were a child. Humans begin training young when the art is demanding," David explained. "The body must learn to move correctly before bad habits form. I spent my childhood practicing forms, building strength, learning to see the world as a swordsman sees it." He ran his fingers along the sheath of his blade, a gesture that seemed unconscious, automatic. "When I was old enough, I joined the Terran Confederacy military. Not the regular forces, but a special unit. We were called the Quiet Division. I have never heard of it." "You would not have," David said. "Our operations were classified at the highest level. We handled problems that could not be solved through normal means. Assassinations, infiltrations, extractions. We went where regular soldiers could not go and did what regular soldiers could not do." Valeth felt a chill run through her. She had suspected something like this, but hearing it confirmed was different. She had been living with a trained killer, a human weapon disguised as a gentle gardener. "How many?" she asked. David understood the question. "I stopped counting after 100. It seemed healthier not to keep track." She did not know what to say to that. 100 lives, maybe more, ended by the hands that had so carefully tended flowers and turned pages of old books. "I served for 15 years, David continued. "I was good at what I did. Too good, maybe. They kept sending me on missions, and I kept completing them. But every mission took something from me. Every life I took left a mark on my soul." He finally looked at her, and his eyes were old, so much older than his face suggested. "There was a mission on a planet called Verith. Your planet. During the war." Velith's blood went cold. "You fought on Verith?" "I was sent to eliminate a military commander who was planning a major offensive against human colonies," David said. "I succeeded. But I also saw what war does to people. I saw the suffering on both sides. I decided that I could not keep living that life." "So you became a diplomat?" "The Confederacy offered me a choice. Keep killing or find another way to serve. I chose diplomacy. I thought that if I can help end conflicts instead of fighting them, maybe I could balance the scales a little. Maybe I could save more lives than I had taken." Valeth processed this information slowly. Her husband had been a soldier in the war against her people. He had killed Kathvari warriors, perhaps even ones she had known. He had walked the same battlefields she had walked, just on the other side of the lines. "Why did you never tell me?" she demanded. "Why hide this?" "Because I hoped I would never have to show you," David said simply. "I wanted to be the person I had chosen to become, not the person I used to be. Every day I practiced Tai Chi instead of sword forms, tended plants instead of planning attacks, read stories about honor instead of living by the blade. I was trying to become someone new. But you kept the sword. Yes, he admitted. I could not let go completely. The training is part of who I am, for better or worse. And I knew that someday, someone might threaten the people I cared about. When that day came, I wanted to be ready. Velith thought about the months they had spent together. All the times she had dismissed him as weak and useless. All the times she had looked at his soft smile and gentle manner and felt nothing but contempt. You could have killed me at any time, she realized. When I insulted you, when I treated you with disrespect, you could have shown me what you really were. What would that have accomplished? David asked. You were angry about the marriage, and you had every right to be. Neither of us chose this arrangement. Fighting with you would have only made things worse. But I was cruel to you. You were cold, David corrected gently. There's a difference. And I understood why. I was a human married to a HFY warrior against both our wills. Of course, you resented me. I did not take it personally. Velith stared at him, seeing him clearly for the first time. He had endured her coldness without complaint, not because he was weak, but because he was strong enough to bear it. He had chosen patience and gentleness, not because he had no other options, but because he believed they were better. I was wrong about you, she said. I was wrong about humans. David smiled, that same soft smile she had seen so many times before. But now she understood what lay behind it. We are very good at being underestimated, he said. It has been one of our greatest advantages as a species. Our enemies see our soft skin and single hearts and assume we are easy prey. They do not see the persistence, the adaptability, the sheer stubborn refusal to die that carried us from mud huts to starships in a mere 10,000 years. He leaned forward, his voice serious. The HFY value visible strength because your evolution rewarded size and ferocity. But human evolution rewarded something different. We learned to hide our fangs until the moment we needed them. We learned that restraint is not weakness. Sometimes, choosing not to kill when you could is the strongest thing a person can do. Velith felt something shift inside her, some barrier she had built beginning to crack. I think I need to learn more about humans, she said. David's smile grew wider. I would be happy to teach you. And for the first time since their forced marriage, Velith did not look away. The weeks following the attack on Velith Station brought many changes to the diplomatic vessel. News of the battle had spread across the galaxy like fire through dry grass. A single human had walked through 12 armed raiders and a cybernetic Vorkan captain in less than a minute, armed with nothing but an ancient blade. The story grew with each retelling, becoming legend, becoming myth. But on the ship itself, something quieter was happening. Velith watched David differently now. She noticed things she had been blind to before. The way he moved through a room, always aware of exits and angles. The way his eyes tracked movement in his peripheral vision while appearing to focus on something else. The way he positioned himself between her and doorways. A protective instinct so ingrained that he probably did not even realize he was doing it. He was still gentle, still kind, still the man who tended his garden and read old books. But now she could see the warrior beneath the surface, the coiled spring waiting to release, the blade hidden in plain sight. Her crew treated him differently, too. They no longer whispered behind their claws about their commander's weak human husband. Instead, they showed him respect, bowing slightly when he passed, asking if he needed anything. The HFY valued strength above all else, and David had proven he possessed it in abundance. But David seemed uncomfortable with the attention. He did not want to be seen as a killer, Velith realized. He wanted to be seen as the person he had chosen to become, not the person he used to be. One evening, a month after the attack, Velith found him in the training bay. The lights were dim, simulating starlight, and David was moving through sword forms with his blade catching the soft glow. His movements were beautiful, she admitted to herself, like a dance made of steel and shadow. She watched from the doorway, reluctant to interrupt. This was a private moment, a glimpse into the core of who he truly was. But eventually, he sensed her presence and lowered his sword. "Valeth," he said, not surprised. "You should be resting. Your arms are still healing. They are strong enough for what I want to do," she said, stepping into the training bay. "I want you to teach me." David raised an eyebrow. "The Kethvari do not use blades. This Kethvari wishes to understand her husband." Something shifted in his expression. The guarded wariness faded, replaced by something warmer, something that might have been hope. "It takes years to master even the basics," he warned her. "I am patient. You will need to move in ways that feel strange to your body. Then I will learn new ways to move. It will be frustrating, humbling. You will fail many times before you succeed." Valeth met his eyes without flinching. "I am not afraid of failure. I am afraid of never truly knowing the person I am bound to. Show me who you are, David, all of it. The warrior and the gardener, the killer and the diplomat. I want to understand." For a long moment, David was silent. Then, for the first time since they had met, she saw him truly smile. Not the polite, guarded smile he usually wore, but something genuine, something that reached his eyes and transformed his whole face. "Very well," he said. "We will start with the basic stance. Watch my feet." That night, and many nights after, they trained together in the dimly lit bay. David was a patient teacher, correcting her mistakes without criticism, praising her successes without flattery. Valeth was a determined student, her natural athleticism helping her adapt to the unfamiliar movements. But more than techniques, she learned about him. She learned about his childhood in a small village surrounded by mountains, where his grandfather had taught him that a true warrior fights only to protect, never to destroy. She learned about his years in the quiet division, the missions that had broken pieces of his soul, the choice he had made to walk away from violence. She learned about the book he was writing, a collection of his experiences meant to help young soldiers transition to civilian life. She learned about his dreams of starting a school someday, teaching the art of the sword as a path to inner peace rather than outer conflict. And he learned about her. She told him about her childhood in the warrior clichés, where weakness meant death and strength meant survival. She told him about her rise through the ranks, the battles that had earned her titles, the loneliness that had been her constant companion. She told him about her fears, things she had never shared with anyone, that she was valued only for her fighting ability, that she did not know who she was without a war to fight, that the peace treaty had left her feeling lost and purposeless. David listened without judgment. He did not try to fix her problems or minimize her feelings. He simply heard her, truly heard her, in a way no one ever had before. Their marriage had begun as politics, a symbol of unity between two powers that had spent years trying to destroy each other. But somewhere in the training bay, between sword forms and shared stories, it became something else. It became a partnership, built not on the absence of strength, but on the recognition of it in each other. 3 months after the attack on Valeth Station, the diplomatic vessel completed its mission and returned to Kethvari space. A formal ceremony was held to celebrate the success of the treaty, attended by representatives from both governments. Valeth stood beside David in the Great Hall, her 4 arms healed and strong, wearing the formal uniform of a Kethvari commander. David wore simple Terran clothes, his sword hidden away once more, his expression calm and peaceful. The High Commander of the Kethvari Empire approached them, his amber eyes studying the human with new interest. He had heard the stories about Valeth Station, of course. Everyone had. You have brought honor to this union, the High Commander said to David. The Kethvari are impressed by your display of strength. David bowed politely. I only did what was necessary to protect my wife. The High Commander's eyes narrowed. Many warriors would brag about such a victory. You seem almost embarrassed by it. Among my people, the greatest warriors are often the quietest, David said. We believe that true strength does not need to announce itself. It simply exists, ready when needed, silent when not. The High Commander considered this for a long moment. Then he turned to Valeth. You have chosen well, Commander Sorn. This human carries fire in his veins, even if he hides it behind a gentle face. He is worthy of you. After the ceremony, Valeth and David stood together on the observation deck, watching the stars. Her hand, clawed and scaled, rested on his, soft and warm. Neither spoke for a long time. What happens now? David finally asked. Valeth smiled, an expression she was still learning to make. Now we continue. Together. I will teach you about my people, and you will teach me about yours. We will build something new, something that belongs to both of us. That sounds good, David said. That sounds very good. She looked at him, this human who had surprised her in every way possible. He was not weak. He had never been weak. He had simply chosen, every single day, to be gentle when he could have been deadly. And that, she was finally beginning to understand, was the most human thing of all. The stars stretched out before them, endless and full of possibilities. And for the first time in her life, Valeth was not looking for the next battle. She was looking forward to peace,